Welcome back to another episode of Inside SFPS. My name is Cody Donarski, Public Information Officer with Santa Fe Public Schools. And today I am joined by Mr. Bryan Cruz, who is a bilingual first grade teacher at Ramirez Thomas Elementary. How are you doing today?
Hi, Cody. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really excited for this episode. I think you are a first bilingual teacher on the podcast.
Wow. So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here.
I'm excited about this. So let's jump right into it. So are you originally from Santa Fe? Where did you grow up?
Well, long story short, I was born in Long Beach, California.
Okay.
My parents took me to Mexico when I was 11 months.
Oh, wow.
So I was raised in both countries, in Mexico, specifically in Poza Rica, Veracruz, and then moved back to California, back and forth. I spent some years of my elementary high school in California, in San Jose and Oakland, and then going back and forth. I ended up doing college in Mexico because it was cheaper to go to college in Mexico. Yeah. So I went to college in Mexico. Then I decided to move back to the United States, and then I ended up in Santa Fe. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My dad, he's a teacher.
Okay.
He also worked for the schools.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
So you grew up with a father as an educator?
Yes, my dad's an educator. Yes.
Were you one of those kids growing up where it's like, I want to do what my dad did? Or did you kind of push away wanting to become a teacher and then kind of ended up back into it? How was that for you?
Well, I remember one time my dad told me, don't be a teacher. He said that to me. I ended up being a teacher. I really loved my profession, my career. Went to school. I'm also an engineer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that what you went to college for?
I went to college for engineering.
Oh, wow.
And then I decided, third semester of engineering, I decided to go to education school. So I did, I was going every Saturday to school for education, and Monday to Friday I was doing engineering. It sounds crazy. I did both at the same time, but yes, I graduated from both.
Oh,
I
wow.
got my major in both.
That's incredible. What was it like, kind of going back really quickly, what was it like for you? Did you go to school between the U.S. and Mexico? Like, were you kind of going back and forth between going to school in Mexico and going to school in California? Mm-hmm. What was that like? Because, some kids do interzone transfers here in Santa Fe, but going to school in two different countries, can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
It was a big impact to me. Mm-hmm. So, for example, sixth grade, right? I went to Mexico. All of a sudden, I took a flight. 3 hours later, I was in California. And going to school the next day, it was a big impact for me in the cultural way. Mm-hmm. It was a big impact, changing to another language, having new friends, new people, a new teacher who doesn't speak Spanish. I was in an English class only, San Jose, California. And it was hard. It was hard, but I always had the support from my parents. They were always there. My dad was at the same school, elementary school.
Okay.
So he was there to support me. They always said, do your best. Do your best. And yeah. So going back and forth, basic education here in the U.S. and Mexico, it's okay to transfer with only a report card. But when I went to high school, it was a long process. I missed like a month of school in Mexico. Because they have to transfer the credits and everything.
So it gets all messy and whatever. Is Spanish your first language or is it English?
Spanish.
So Spanish.
Yes.
So you went to an English only, was it English only school or you were just in an English only class?
It was an English only school.
So and I've never really been able to ask this, kind of getting a little insight as a Spanish speaking student, going to an English only school or English only class, what is that like? And it's hard for me to even think about. And for a lot of people that, when I went to school, they just spoke English and that was my language. That's what I grew up with. But for someone who isn't a native English speaker and only speaks Spanish, what is that like for you as a student?
Oh, well, going back, it was hard. It was really hard. Obviously, I had some Hispanic classmates. They were translating for me. They were helping me with that. My teacher, he was, helping me with a lot of pictures, a lot of things. I wasn't speaking English, but just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because when we were in Mexico, my parents sent me to English classes over there. So there's a saying that if you don't use it, you lose it. Yep. So that was the whole reason why they sent me to English classes. But it was It was hard. Honestly, it was hard. Back then, there was not a lot of resources. Google was brand new, probably.
Yeah. Well, and you probably didn't have kind of the expansive language programs like we have in Santa Fe public schools. You know, It was, you went to school. This is the language that they speak. You didn't really have, I'm sure, I'm totally guessing.
And I remember, well, obviously my dad, he's bilingual, a bilingual teacher in schools. So they were starting this pilot program of bilingual classes in California back then. So it was a big impact for me as a student. Learning, it was so hard. But my teacher, my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Martinez, he used to help me a lot with that. He learned some words in Spanish for me.
Oh, that's good. So it was kind of mutually beneficial. You taught him, he taught you. That's great. So your dad and your family moved to Santa Fe how old were you around?
That was back in 2014. So
fairly recent.
Yes. So my dad, he's in the exchange visitor program. He moved to Santa Fe, and then my brother moved here with him. Then my mom, and then I was in college back then, so I just finished my major, and then I decided to move here. I decided to move to Santa Fe because it's a great city, and another reason why was because to honor my brother. My brother, he passed away. Is that okay to say that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So he passed away. He used to work at Piñon Elementary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I moved to Santa Fe to honor him because his dream was to live in Santa Fe forever. So that's another reason why I decided to move to Santa Fe.
It's touching. And he was a teacher, obviously, as well?
He was an EA.
Yeah.
He was an EA and pre-K. And
when you moved to Santa Fe, were you set on becoming a teacher, or did your degree in engineering kind of come back where you're like, oh, should I follow?
I was already working in Mexico for almost 3 years.
Okay.
As a teacher over there. I wasn't a full-time contractor of the schools. I was only going to teach some English to my students. So I did that for almost 3 years. Then I moved to Santa Fe. I started at Sweeney as a substitute teacher for a third grade class. And then I moved here to Ramirez Thomas.
And how many years have you been here at Ramirez Thomas?
This is my 5th year.
Okay.
Ramirez Thomas as a first grade teacher.
And have you been first grade the whole time?
Yes.
Have you only done elementary?
I did, K6.
So you've been a K6 teacher your entire career?
Teacher. Yeah. In Mexico, I used to teach all K6 students. I did 1 semester teaching English at my engineering school in Veracruz. There was this class of engineering. They wanted to learn more English and more reading comprehension. So I went and support them with some paragraphs, some readings about engineering. So that was only 6 months. So I can say that I taught college. For 6 months only.
For 6 months, yeah. Hey, that's all you have to say, though. I taught college. That's all that matters. Why? I'm curious. Did you know that you wanted to do K6, or was it just kind of what you started doing and what you stuck with?
No, I really wanted to do K6. I really wanted to do K6. I think I wanted to do more like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. But then I got the job here in 1st grade, and it was hard. The first year was hard, but then nowadays it's easy. I love it. But I wanted to do a lot of K6 only.
Yeah. That's fascinating to me how everyone who is taught kind of has like their kind of niche grades where it's like, oh, I loved middle school, didn't like elementary, didn't like high school, or I love high school, didn't like middle school, only do K6, didn't do anything more. Every teacher kind of has their own like grade range that they really love. And then they like, I don't want to touch anything else other than like kind of the grades that I'm in. What was it like? I think you're one of the first teachers. I know I had Miss Cahill on a little while ago, but what was it like for you as a first grade teacher teaching kids through the pandemic? Because I know I asked Erica on the previous episode, or Erica, Miss Martinez, I asked this, the principal at Chaparral, what it was like to be a principal at that time. And I know she was a pretty new principal the year of the pandemic, but what was it like for you as a first grade teacher? Because you're working with 6-year-olds, right?
Yes,
6-year-olds who it's really like their second year in school. because they had kindergarten. This was their second year of school. So they're still fairly new in the school environment. And then now we're telling them, hey, you're having to learn in the pandemic. What was that like for you as a teacher?
Oh, that's
probably a loaded question.
Yeah. It was hard at the beginning. Yeah. Cause like you said, they're on this beginning years of being in school, right? And first graders at the beginning of the year, they like to play a lot.
Yeah.
Play, run, jump, everything. We were first graders, right?
Yeah.
So we used to do that. But it was during the pandemic, it was hard at the beginning. But then students, once they go in the routine, once they get into the routines, they get better. So for me, it was in the pandemic, like having them seated in a specific space at their house. It was really hard. So I remember my team and I, we look for a picture how to set up a little station in their homes so they know what that was their space during school hours. So having the students on a specific space, that was something hard during the pandemic. Reading was hard at the beginning, but then we came up with any ideas. We used like Seesaw. We use Epic. We used different apps that district gave us. And it was great to see how students were able to start reading or improve the reading using different apps. One of the things that I really love is my hover camera. That little thing, it's amazing. I just put a book, use my finger. My students were using it. Well, they didn't have one. I was using it to them. So they were amazed of how I was reading and using my fingers. And we were looking at the words. We're working with beginning sounds, everything. So it was that part. It was hard at the beginning, but we did it like for almost a year. So then the students improve a lot.
Did you notice, because you stayed first grade the whole time. So at the end of 2020, the kids that started the year in the class and then transitioned to remote, did you find that the kindergartners that came into first grade were better prepared, or did we still have, was there still a transition period, even getting the kindergartners kind of up to speed with how things work? Because the first graders that you kind of finished 2020 with moved on to second grade, the kindergartners coming in had just finished the year remote. Did you find that they had an easier time transitioning when they got into first grade? Like, oh, okay, we're used to logging into our computer. We know how to get into our, classes and stuff like that. Did you find that, I don't want to call it the second year, but the year after we went remote, did you find that those kindergartners transitioning had it a little bit easier? Or was there still a little period where they were getting used to everything?
No, I think it was easier for them to use different tools. Back then, students were used to use iPads. And I think the iPad probably was not helping them 100%. But now that those students that you were saying coming from kindergarten to first grade, now they changed to Chromebooks, or they have Chromebooks now, and it's way better. So they know how to use those different tools. It was a good transition. It wasn't really bad as we thought it was going to be.
I appreciated so much how creative teachers got during the pandemic. And I'm curious, what was, when you look back, what was some of the more creative stuff that you did to, whether it's to help kids engaged, or whether it was like, normally in this lesson, I do this, but because we were in the pandemic and remote, I wasn't able to, so I did this. Like, what were some of the more creative things that you did?
Those lessons on Seesaw were really creative. That's where I learned how to use those type of apps. And then another thing was videos. I remember my wife helping me. This is crazy. But I remember my wife helping me to create videos, because when we started remote, we were only uploading videos. I remember. We didn't have Google Meet.
Yeah.
We were only using what we call Canvas, I believe.
Yeah.
Open access Canvas. So I remember my wife holding the iPad on top of me. She was pregnant and she was holding the iPad. I was doing my calendar session with a math lesson. I was doing my calendar, moving everything. And I remember one time and this wasn't one of the videos, she said, "Ya acabaste? Are you done?" I was like, no, hold it right there. Don't move. I'm doing my video. Don't move it. I was like, and then it was hard because those videos were like 8 minutes or plus. Yeah. And then the editing, that's where I learned how to edit videos. So that I started being creative with that. I remember using a lot of like the Padlets with the students. Yes. Those different tools, the students were able to learn. And I found that part of my creativity to do with students. I mean, sometimes I use slideshows, right? And like a Google slide for the students. But that's something that I think everyone knows how to use, right? But like Padlets, using the videos, editing, voice record when on Seesaw, even how to use Seesaw. For me, Seesaw was brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, I remember teachers saying that, oh, Seesaw is a great app. Do you have all the resources there? I was like, I don't know how to use it. What's Seesaw? What is it? Sounds like a puzzle or something. So it was hard at the beginning, but then you get used to it.
Ramirez Thomas did some really creative things, like the school in general. Cause I remember Zhang, the music teacher, some of the stuff that I saw that she was putting out with those music kids. I dropped into one of the music classes and she had these kids up and singing and dancing, and everyone had their cameras on. And my wife, we had like a little room that became our office, and my wife and I would work in there. And she's like, what are you on right now? And I showed her, and she's like, that is so cool that it was just so interesting to see all the different ways that teachers were getting kids to be engaged. And I know it was tough. It probably wasn't perfect at all times, but the extent that teachers went to keep kids engaged during the pandemic was so commendable. And I don't think you guys get enough kudos for how creative you had to get, because and I'm not a teacher, so I can't speak to it personally, but you have kind of a routine of, this is the lesson, this is what I do, this is what I've done for the last few years, this is what works. And then now it's like, well, all of this only works if I'm here in person with them. So now I have to pivot away from all of the curriculum that I've built and find a way to make kids want to do it without me being there overseeing them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people, and I don't even think I know fully how difficult that probably was to transition from the curriculum that you had to basically coming up with it on the fly, right?
Yeah, it was here at Ramirez Thomas. We teach a mini lesson, and then we have a workshop that the students learn how to read and write. And that transition to remote, it was hard, because then when we like break into reading time, we didn't know if the student was really reading, right? We didn't know if the student was really writing something, and also like all those type of activities. It was hard to monitor our students, but we had all the support from our admin team. We had the support from our parents, our community. I know some parents that they were there right next to the student, and they were supporting them. They were like, oh, so the teacher says this, so maybe you can improve on the writing. And that's one of the things, the support that we had. I think another good reason why we had the students focusing in our daily activities, it was because we were like telling them about our RT3, right? And it's about a responsibility, teamwork, and empathy. So that's one other things that we engage. Teachers, we tell them every single day, like, remember the RT3. So you do your best and work as a team, be responsible. So that's one of the things. Talking about Young, about how she created these videos. I remember at the end of the year, she made a spectacular video with the kindergarten students. They were dancing and everything. That was amazing. We came up with different ideas. First graders, they were showing us their toys on Google Meet. They were showing us their pets on Google Meet. And we did a pet parade. We had a pet parade. It was great. I don't have a pet at home, so I got a llama that my wife won at the state fair. So I got the llama. It was pink llama. You never see a pink llama. And we were like playing with it. I was like, this is my pet, and everyone had the chance to show their pet and everything, because the students really want to do it during instruction time. So we're like looking for a period, like probably like a Friday, so their students can show their stuff.
And it was probably, I found that so many kids had that opportunity, and it kind of allowed students and even adults to kind of see beyond the work person that sits in front of you. Like, you got to see inside the lives of some kids. You got to see their pets. This is my dog Fluffy, and this is my sister something, and this is my brother, and this is my mom and dad, and this is my bedroom, and this is my favorite blanket, and this is my favorite toy. And like, you really got to see about people, if that makes sense. And I even, for me, for example, is, for most of the pandemic, my wife was pregnant, and
my wife too.
Yeah. So, they'd be like, how is she doing? And then after my daughter was born, they would say, oh, can we see her? So then I'd put her on camera and they'd all see her. And then a couple months later go by and they'd be like, is your daughter home? Can we see her? And like, they got to watch my daughter grow up through a camera, but they were just as engaged in it as I was. Like, how's your daughter doing? How is she doing today? Like, is she sleeping? Yada, yada, yada. And I don't know if they would have had that same interest had we been in person. They were just so much more like, is your daughter okay? Can we see her? How big has she gotten? Is she walking yet? Is she talking yet? What kind of food is she eating? And then they share personal stories like, oh, when my daughter was that age, she was doing this and that. And I just found that some of the more human connections got stronger because essentially we were working with all of our colleagues at home. So they were at home with us. Yeah. So was it like that at the teacher level? Cause I mean, you probably spent most of your time with kids and not with as many adults, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I spent it, all my day. Sometimes I was working till late. I was like, oh, it's already 4 or 5 o'clock and students were dismissed at 3 o'clock or 2:50 and I was still working. Yeah. And my students, like I said, they were sometimes they were sad. They were saying like, I really want to go back to school. Right. And they're little and they're honest with their comments. Right. Really honest with their comments. So yeah, but you mentioned like human connection. Yeah, that human connection really impact our students. I think everyone. Yeah, in planet Earth.
When that first day back, whatever, April 6th,
16th, 16 or 6,
something with a 6. Whatever day it was, what was it like for you to come back? I know we still had a lot of COVID rules, social distancing, masking, and whatever, but I was at Capitol High School that day. And just the energy of being in the school again, kids were laughing and having a good time. And like, even with the masks and stuff, they were still enjoying every second of it. For you, when those kids came back, what was that day like for you?
It was beautiful. Coming back and see the students, coming back and see your team, your people that you work with. It was amazing. It was sad that you couldn't even hug someone, right? And to say hi. It was amazing. It was amazing going back. Students were like, they were making comments. They were saying like, I thought you were taller, Mr. Cruz. That was when
that goes back to the brutally honest that these first graders are.
Yeah. And then I remember students were like, oh, you look skinnier on the screen. I was like, what do you mean? But yeah, I mean, it was wonderful coming back to school. Even though we had a lot of restrictions, we always did our best to keep those restrictions, to respect those rules, right?
Yeah. But the energy that kids bring to a school building, like even right now, we're sitting in your classroom and there's no kids in here and it's just a room. But when you walk into a classroom with kids, there's just a completely different energy about that room.
Yeah. Yeah. The energy, it was good.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, everyone's happy. Everyone was happy to be back.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I am going to finish with the question that I ask all of my guests is, what was the best piece of advice or guidance that you've ever gotten from a teacher or a mentor?
The best advice that I got from a teacher?
You can take a second too.
So best advice that I received from a mentor.
Yeah, mentor or teacher.
Yeah, mentor. Everything.
Anything that your dad told you?
I'm sorry. I'm just have a plan B ready. Yeah, plan B ready for teachers. That's something.
If you want to do that, yeah. Well, it could be like have a plan B ready, especially because you never know what's going to happen throughout a day. You could think that you're going to teach this lesson and that doesn't really happen. So if you want to,
I think the best advice that a mentor gave me, it was to always have a plan B. You never know what's going to happen. You never know if all the students are going to be here, right? But always to have a plan B. Obviously, we set up everything. We have our plans for the whole week, but you never know. So always to have a plan B. That was I remember one of my mentors that told me that. Yeah.